Hi everybody, welcome to one of the last lectures for the course. We're going to be talking about Chapter 19 in the Glickman, Gordon, and Ross Gordon book, which addresses action research. So this is not a required chapter in this class, but the reason that I've elected to cover this is because it is huge in our doctoral program. You're going to see your methodology courses, your school and community collaborations, your school reform course that really focuses on this concept of action research. So really what I wanted to do here is have a quick, dirty lecture that's going to give you kind of an assessment on what it is, how you can use it as master's students in ways that can eventually help you when you're looking at your own research in your own schools. So action research is normally done by a school district for a school district. It involves this notion of practice, practical problems, practitioners, making changes to really involve people that are in the building in the district and to improve the school district itself. That's why we look at it, that's what it's used for, and that's where you're going to see it mostly in our school system. Most of the time, people in buildings or at the district level make a decision and they say, well, we need to involve so-and-so in a project to improve our professional practice. When they do that, they look at needs that are specifically in the building. They gather data about ways that something could be improved or worked upon, and then they determine an action plan that normally has a timeline that's devoted to specifically to when the plan is going to go and how it's in the steps that are involved in it. Once the plan has been determined, normally the team will meet again, and then they'll look at the ways that they're going to gather data, different baselines, ways that they're going to switch data if need be, really to see if this is something that's feasible to be done in your school system. So if you have teachers that are at a low developmental level, the likelihood of them engaging in action research is very low. They might not have an idea of what action research is or what it's supposed to look like. And a lot of them need more training and more time in their roles in order to understand how what they're doing can impact not just the students in their classroom, but the students throughout the building as well. And we've already talked about the developmental levels in this course, but the teachers that are at the lower developmental levels, they're not going to have as many capabilities as people that are at a higher level. So what I need to stress that I think is important is the fact that a lot of times I have personally seen action research done for the sake of doing action research. Schools gather data, collect the data, and then they do absolutely nothing with it. And they say, well, we collected all this data, and here it is. I've seen that happen more frequently than I care to admit. A lot of times the data will be there, it'll just collect dust, and it's not used for the purpose that it's supposed to be used for. When that happens, you've wasted the time of a lot of stakeholders, normally the principal or the assistant principal, and the teachers that were involved in the process. It's also an issue in terms of faith as well, because if the teachers had faith in you as somebody who was going to be a leader, and the data didn't go forward, then that could be a problem as well. The next time you ask them to do something that is going to be used, the likelihood of them jumping in and saying, I'm ready, it just isn't there. So action research needs to be used to improve instruction. I think that goes without saying. It has to be done to really improve the instructional levels that are going on in the school in ways not only that you can make one teacher look better, but the entire teaching staff look better. I believe very much so that being tied to professional development is huge, because that way the teachers actually are collecting data on something that matters to them, and the principal supporting it throughout the course and throughout the program. Some of it doesn't get off the ground, it's not successful, but it's a way to really push forward research that could be beneficial. So we're going to look at all the characteristics of successful action research on the next few slides, as we normally do, but we'll go over each one of these and why they matter. The first one is a no-brainer, and it's something that has to be considered by everybody who's in this classroom. Action research has to be distributed, and the teachers have to feel like they're equal to the principals, curriculum directors, assistant principals, and even people at central administration. If a teacher does not feel like their voice matters in terms of the research that's being conducted in the school, the likelihood they are to support it and get behind it is slim to none. teachers have to be demonstration teachers, peer coaches, and curriculum developers, and they need to be involved in the process, and they need to inform the principals on really what the data says, because they're the ones that are on the front lines. They're the ones that are in the classroom. They're the ones that are working directly with the teachers. Supervisors should be involved, and they should highlight work that's going on in the classroom, and they should really be a way to disseminate it to the rest of the teaching staff. If you believe the notion that I've made throughout this entire class that education is a loosely coupled system, which I say in every single one of my classes, you really understand that the supervisor has to disseminate the information, because every teacher is self-contained in their classrooms, and very few of them share and collaborate unless they're prompted to share and collaborate. So having conversations and feeling like the research matters is a good way that the supervisors can keep it going and can inform others that are engaged in practice as well. It has to have a point at the end of the day. It has to be a multitude of data. I prefer studies that are mixed method. I think there's something to be said about sitting down and interviewing people face to face and getting their feedback, or even doing it by telephone, encoding data, as you know, because we did that in this class. But quantitative data is important too as well, and it can be linked to survey responses and not just test scores. But teachers that review the data also should participate in assessing the data and figuring out what it means and what it stands for. So I believe it should be grounded in data as well. You need to make sure that a needs assessment is conducted, not just in the beginning, but in the middle, and durationally throughout your action research project as well, because the teachers have to be involved in it, and they have to know how they're being used and what possible needs they might have. If they're being asked to collect data for a project that's very large in scope and sequence, and the school district doesn't have the necessary resources in order to make that happen, that can be a problem. And sometimes principals live in utopia and believe that everything is going correctly. And you all know that. The principals have, as we've said a million times, 50, 60 different things that are on their plate at any given time. So the teachers need to let the principals know what they need, and they need to be able to do it in a way where they don't feel threatened. So once you have plans and successes in writing, that itself is going to make your actual project a million times better. If schools get a system that works and data collection that works, you duplicate the study again. You keep it going and you make improvements and you touch upon it. And when you take the EDLE 6493, which is our school reform course here, this is a big idea, and it's a big consideration that we talk about all the time. It's that if you do a study correct the first time, there's nothing wrong with duplicating it and keeping that structure and improving on it and using it to reform schools. It's what Michael Fullen would tell you to do, and you would do it with this goal of continuous improvement. So keeping records is important, and I think that's a huge idea in this process. So the notion of extensive collaboration, people need to work together, they need to inform each other, and they need to inform practice as well. It'll lead to increased trust and respect among members of the school community. If the teachers see themselves as equals to the building principals, that's only going to help the situation. So the ethnographic study and interpretive action research. We have faculty members at this institution who are very big on this. It's not an area of my expertise, but it's the idea of where teachers sit and create field notes about their own experiences and write reflections. When they do this, this can help inform what's actually going on in the classroom, and hopefully in other classrooms as well. This isn't exactly my area. I'm more of a data and a quant person, but I think this is important to note that, you know, using this as an ethnographic study to reflect on past practices is something we all learned in teacher education, right? We learned that when you write a lesson plan, you need to reflect on it. So doing this is certainly acceptable. So critical action research is used really as a way to reform schools and improve society. once again, I think this is another big takeaway message that you're going to have more in a doctoral program than you are in a master's program, because this notion of social justice and urban school district reform will come up huge in any doc program that you have, but we only briefly touch upon it in a master's program because our goal really is to get you certified and to get you out there and practicing. But looking at those social and economic and political forces are important, and that's a big part of critical action research. So shared governance for action research is this notion of democracy, and that the teacher has an equal voice to the principal. I keep saying that, but that has to be kept in mind. You want your teachers to support you. The best way to do it is to have an equal view between the teacher and the principal in terms of the research that's being conducted. So. One of the other things that you're going to see, and more come out in the doctoral program than you would in a class like this, we're going to talk a lot about site-based management, which a lot of school districts are switching to. Certainly, charter schools and private schools are switching to site-based management. It's kind of built into their system. When you have shared governance in a school, that's kind of the introductory feature of site-based management, right? Because you have different stakeholders: a teacher representative, a community representative, a business representative, a school board member, and somebody from the administrative team that are really making decisions that directly affect that building and that school. And once that shared governance implements the decision, that's kind of how it goes, and everybody in the school needs to be on board and should be in support of that. So the big ideas behind this is this notion of one person and one vote. Everybody needs to have an equal vote and an equal say. The community member is just as important as the building principal, so please don't lose sight of that. The notion of decisions within the control and sphere of responsibility of the school, it has to be stuff that directly impacts the instruction that's going on in the school more than anything else, and that's done at the site-based level. And then when we're looking at small groups, when you have large faculty meetings, that just silences everybody and quiets them. The work that I've done on site-based management is all really related to school finance and organizational theory. But I have seen in org theory, they say that site-based management, most of the authors will say 7 to 10 stakeholders. And in your finance classes, they'll say 10 to 12. So I think that's a fair number. In order to have shared governance, you should have no more than 12. That does allow all votes to be heard. The other thing that I would say, I like the notion of having an odd number of representatives. That way it's not split down the middle. I think that's important, because then you have an equal, you have a chance for a decision to be made, and you don't have a split vote, which I've seen happen when I was a teacher and working in a department of 8 teachers, where sometimes when we would have issues come up, we were split down the middle on them. So when you do action research, there has to be a plan in place for gathering data, and teachers have to understand what they're doing with data. Many times, teachers will simply gather it, shove it on the principal's desk, which all of you are going to be, and then they're going to say, here it is, do your report. You have to give them the basic preparation of it and make sure they understand confidentiality, legal restrictions with it. If there's anything that's going to be collected for a certain purpose, they need to know what to do with it. And those practices should be clearly explained and understood by all the teachers that are part of the action research project. I think it's important too that teachers deserve publication rights off of what they're doing. Anything that I do and I work with on somebody, I want to make sure that there's research that goes on at conferences and with other teachers as well. I will say this about kind of the work that I do that can be a little challenging for me. I tend to err on the side of caution in terms of conferences. I'm working with a number of colleagues from a lot of different institutions. I will see them push out studies that aren't quite done. I don't do that. I normally, if I start a study with somebody, it is not getting presented for 2 or 3 years until it's perfect, until it's ready to go, and until I'm confident in the data and the results. And it's something that I think is important too with action research, because if you want it to actually have some sort of meaning, you don't want to present just preliminary findings on it. You actually want it to be final findings that can lead to additional research and additional studies. So this is the end of the class. This is the last bit of theory that's in the Glickman text. I hope you got something out of it. I hope it helps you. All we have left are the final projects and the final supervisions, so we're moving on, and I really appreciated teaching this class. I can't say enough how excited I was to have this class on the books. This was one of the main exciting classes that I wanted to teach when I came here, and I'm glad that I had the opportunity to do it. So I hope you enjoyed the course, and I hope you enjoyed the video, and if I can do anything else to help you, please let me know. Thank you.